Hey, you're here again. I'm really glad. Before we drift into another piece of forgotten history, I want to thank you for listening. If you haven't yet, tap subscribe or follow, that way you won't miss the next quiet dive into the past. Leave a like if you enjoy slow stories. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? What time is it for you right now? Is it already late? Or are you trying to nap in the middle of the day? Wherever you are, it's okay to slow down. You've made it this far, and that's already enough. Now, breathe in, breathe out. Let the noise fall away. We're going somewhere very far tonight, somewhere you wouldn't last a single day. Welcome to feudal Japan. It's not what you imagine. This isn't the world of samurai movies, of perfect temples in moonlight, of cherry blossoms falling in silence. That image is a ghost, a shadow. The real thing is louder, hungrier, stricter. And if you woke up in it barefoot, speechless, and stripped of your 21st century comforts, you wouldn't know what to do. You wouldn't even know where to stand. The first thing you'd notice is the cold. The walls of the house, if you're lucky enough to be inside one, are made of paper and wood. Thin, delicate, useless against the wind. The floor is hard. Tatami mats don't cushion much. Your feet are bare. Your clothes are strange. Not silk, not robes, not armor, just wrong. The moment someone sees you, they know you don't belong. Your hairstyle, your posture, your smell, even your silence is suspicious. You might try to smile, bow, say something polite, but the language is off. You sound like a child, a foreigner, maybe a threat. You're surrounded by order, not just social order, spiritual order, cosmic order. Everything has a place, a time, a role, and you have none. The people around you bow to their elders, speak in careful tones, move with practiced grace. They dress according to rank, eat according to season, worship in rituals older than memory, and you don't even know where to put your hands. Someone tries to help. They hand you something to wear. It itches, smells of smoke and straw. It's tied in unfamiliar ways. There's no zipper, no elastic. You feel like you're wearing someone else's skin. You step outside. The village is alive, but not in the way you expect. The air smells of earth, ash, and fermented rice. A stream runs nearby, but the water isn't for drinking, not without boiling. Children run barefoot, not playing. Working, carrying buckets, chopping roots, gathering insects for food. Their eyes are alert. Their stomachs never quite full. You ask yourself, where are the adults? Most are gone. War, disease, famine. The average life doesn't last long. You see a man pass with swords on his waist. A samurai. He doesn't speak to you, doesn't look at you, but you feel the air shift around him. Like gravity bends in his presence. He belongs. You don't. You bow. It's too slow, too low, or not low enough. You can't tell. He walks on. And you breathe again. There are rules, 1,000 of them. When to speak, when to kneel, how to serve tea, how to pray, how to die. The wrong step is not just embarrassing. It's offensive, dangerous, fatal. The rice you're given is small, dry. There's miso soup, but it's thin, salty. Vegetables are pickled if they exist. Meat is rare, and you can't use the chopsticks right. They slide in your fingers like sticks of soap. You drop them. Someone watches. You try to apologize, but again, the words don't come out right. You look at your hands. Too soft, too slow. Not calloused like theirs, not trained, not prepared. You're new farmer, new priest, new artisan. You have no trade, no lineage, no name that fits, and that makes you nothing. In feudal Japan, nothing is dangerous. A body without status has no shield, no voice. You could vanish, and no one would ask why. A thief? A ghost? A spirit lost between worlds? There are stories about people like you, but they don't end well. You think of running. But to where? The mountains are wild, the forest thick, and the roads belong to soldiers, to brigands, to officials who question every traveler. And your answers wouldn't be enough. Night falls. It comes fast. No streetlights, no headlights, just lanterns, and most are already out. People sleep early because candles are expensive, because light is sacred. You're offered a place in the corner of a hut. The straw mat is rough, the blanket is thin. You hear insects, mice, someone coughing in the next room. You try to sleep, but your mind races. Tomorrow, what will you do? What will you say? How long until they ask who you are? Until they stop pretending to be kind? Until they ask for your place, your papers, your oath? And when you have none, what happens then? The night deepens. You curl tighter. Your back aches. Your pride dims. You miss the hum of machines, the glow of screens, the illusion of safety. You thought you could handle history, but history is sharp. It scratches, it bites, and it doesn't care that you're from the future. It only asks, who are you? And if you don't know, it answers for you. And that answer is silence. Sleep now. You made it through the first day. Barely. You wake again. Not with the ease of comfort, but with the ache of survival. The straw mat beneath you has shifted. Your back is sore. Your stomach aches, not from sickness, but from emptiness. Outside, the first light stretches along the edge of the mountains, and you hear the faint sound of a wooden bell. Not a clock. A signal. Someone, somewhere, has already started the fire. The day has begun, and it expects you to know your place. But you don't. And that's where the trouble starts. In feudal Japan, there is no such thing as being simply a person. You are something specific. You are a category, a role, a rung on a ladder that was built centuries before you were born. And you are standing on nothing. At the top are the gods. They don't walk among you. They are in the temples, in the air, in the emperor's blood. Yes, blood. He is divine, untouchable. Even his name is sacred. You wouldn't be allowed to say it out loud. You wouldn't be allowed to look him in the eyes, if somehow you were ever close enough to try. Below him, in layers like stone steps, sit the shogun, the daimyo, the samurai. Each tier has its rights, its restrictions, its codes, and beneath them farmers, artisans, merchants, the hymen, and below even them, in the silence no one discusses, are the Ada, the Heinen, the invisible ones, the unclean. You would not know where to stand, because here, it's not just about what you do, it's who you were born as. Your father's job, your mother's status, your grandfather's shame, all of it is etched into your soul like writing on bamboo. You cannot scrub it off. You cannot explain your way around it. And you don't have even that. You have no lineage here, no paper, no past, which makes you worse than the lowest caste. You are an anomaly, a break in the order. And order is everything. Imagine being asked, who are your people? And you have no answer. Imagine needing permission to walk down a path, to speak to a merchant, to sit on a stone, and you don't even know the words to ask. The samurai pass again. You hear the soft tap of their sandals. Their swords are sharp, their eyes sharper. They are the enforcers of this invisible structure. And if they stop you, it's not a conversation, it's a verdict. You try to be invisible. You lower your head, walk slowly, don't draw attention. But your silence is loud. Your clothes, though borrowed, still look wrong. Your posture isn't trained. Your skin hasn't been burned in the rice fields. Your nails are too clean. A peasant sees you and assumes you're a beggar. A samurai sees you and assumes you're a spy. A monk sees you and assumes you're a soul lost between worlds. You open your mouth, but even your breath sounds foreign. You are out of alignment with the universe they know. And there is no place for that. A child walks past carrying a bundle of wood twice their size. They do not speak to you. Children do not talk back. They obey. Work. Endure. You try to help. You lift a bucket. It spills. The water hits your feet. Mud clings to your robe. A woman stares. You bow in apology, but not deep enough. She looks away, lips tight. You've insulted her, maybe, or frightened her. Or perhaps reminded her of something unclean. You don't know. And you won't be told. There are no signs to follow, no apps to translate the moment, just the weight of centuries pressing down on your every movement. You are learning something new: fear without understanding. Not the fear of violence, the fear of existing incorrectly, of being seen but not understood, tolerated but not accepted. You hear chanting, monks perhaps, or a ritual you're not allowed to witness. You follow the sound. It leads to a shrine. Quiet, beautiful, sacred. You step closer. A rope blocks your way. You stop, but it's too late. An elder sees you, their eyes harden. You've crossed into a space not meant for you. Not because you are evil, but because you are out of place. In feudal Japan, placement is everything. A wrong footstep can be a sin. A breath in the wrong room can be shame. A look at the wrong person can be death. You return to the hut. Or perhaps it's not yours. It's just where you've been tolerated. Someone hands you a piece of rice cake. You bow deeply. Too deeply? Not enough? You eat it in silence. Around you, people speak in hushed tones. Their words rise and fall like waves you can't catch. You try to listen, learn, adapt. But your mind is spinning. You don't know the customs. You don't know the taboos. And the worst part? You don't know how to disappear. In modern life, you can vanish behind a screen, behind headphones, behind busyness. Here, there is nowhere to hide. The world is made of eyes, judging, watching, measuring. The sun rises. Higher. You are given a tool, something to dig. You kneel by the field, next to a line of others. They don't speak, just work. You mimic their rhythm, but your hands blister, your back cramps, your knees burn. Still, you keep digging, because movement is safety. Stillness is suspicion. You are dirt now, covered in sweat, straw, and silence. You do not ask questions, because questions are danger. And answers, if they come, will not help you. You hear a bird call, a signal, a change in shift, or a warning. You don't know, but everyone else moves, and you, late again, stumble to follow. The day isn't over, not even close. And already, your bones are tired of pretending to belong. You wipe your brow with a sleeve that smells of old smoke and bitter herbs. You whisper to yourself, just keep breathing, just make it through. But deep inside, you feel it. The truth. You are not built for this world. And it knows. Sleep will come, but not soon. The sun still lingers, and the rules still surround you, unseen but sharp. Wait, endure, vanish, survive. The sun begins to sink. It doesn't fall quickly, like in the city you remember. It lingers here. It bleeds slowly across the sky, brushing the wooden beams with a color that feels like an apology. Your fingers are numb, not from cold, from labor, from doing something your muscles never learned to do. You don't know if you did it right. You don't even know what you were doing, but you carried. You dug, you bowed, you listened, you tried, and now you are bone tired in a way no coffee could ever fix. The others around you do not rest. They transition from work to cleaning, from field to floor, from duty to ritual. There is no collapse. There is no couch. There is no warm light and background music. There is only the rhythm of living, of surviving, and you are always a step behind. A woman carries water inside. 2 children sweep the floor with sticks that look older than memory. A man sharpens a blade, not because he expects violence, but because dullness is shame. You sit on the edge of the threshold, between outside and in, not knowing if you're allowed to enter, not knowing if you want to. Your back aches, your legs tremble, but still you wait. The sky darkens further. The blue becomes velvet. A single star appears. No one comments. No one looks up. They've seen it before. You haven't. You whisper to yourself, "Am I still real?" Because nothing here has acknowledged your world. No echoes, no familiar signs, no reminders that you exist beyond this moment. A bowl is placed before you, rice, a few thin vegetables. Warm, but silent. No fork, no spoon. Just 2 sticks and the expectation that you will know how to use them. You try. Poorly. Food drops. You flush with shame. You try again. And again. And then someone, gently, without words, lifts their bowl and slurps. You follow. And for 1 second, just one, you are not out of place. Night falls fully now. The walls breathe with wind. The paper doors shift slightly, as if exhaling the heat of the day. You are shown to a mat. Thin, straw, worn by time and too many stories. You kneel, lie down. The mat creaks, the room sighs. Someone lights a small lamp. Its flame dances gently. You feel it flicker against your closed eyes, and you try to let go of the weight, of the noise in your head, of the memory of screens, of blankets, of brushed teeth and night routines. But your body won't forget. It remembers softness, warmth, options. Here, there is only stillness. A cough in the corner. A rustle of cloth. Somewhere outside, a dog barks once, then silence. You cannot sleep, not truly. You drift, float, hover between this world and the one you knew. But the dreams are strange. In them, you're back home. But everyone bows. No one speaks your name. And when you open your mouth, only birdsong escapes. You wake with a start. It is still dark. A single candle has burned down to a stub. A figure moves silently past the door. You don't know who. You don't ask. Asking is noise. Asking is danger. You lie back down. Try again. Your stomach groans, but you're not hungry. Just empty. Your hands twitch. Your toes curl against the cold. The mat beneath you is itchy. It smells like mildew and memory. Your neck cramps. Still, you try to rest, because dawn comes early. And this place does not pause for your pain. You think of music, of the hum of traffic, of neon signs and soft beds. You think of friends, of pizza, of laughter, but they all feel flat now. As if they belong to someone else. Someone cleaner, softer, someone not here. A bell chimes somewhere in the distance. Not loud, not urgent, just a reminder. That time, like the rice fields, does not stop growing. You close your eyes again. This time, you do not dream. There is no room. Only the quiet beating of a heart trying to slow down. A breath trying not to be heard. A body trying not to exist too loudly. Morning will come. With it, more orders, more bows, more fear of doing something wrong without knowing what it was. You whisper to yourself, just one more sunrise. Then maybe you'll understand. Then maybe it will get easier. But you already know it won't. Because here, in this land, in this century, in this body, you are always foreign, always slightly wrong. And the world will never explain itself to you. It will only demand you learn. Or disappear. You wake not to the sound of alarm, not to the soft buzz of a phone or the artificial song of a digital morning, but to silence. Not the comforting kind that lulls you back to sleep, but the kind that holds its breath. The kind that waits for you to move first, so it can judge your motion. The fire has long gone out. The mat beneath you has grown colder. Your spine aches from its stiff kindness, and your limbs protest. But no one asks. No one wonders how you slept. Sleep here is not a topic. Rest is not a right. It is a pause, nothing more. Outside, the world is already moving. You step out and the air hits you not with temperature, but with precision. People are already at work. Their bodies lean forward, their hands swift, their eyes always downward. You try to mimic the posture, the rhythm, the absence of self. A boy no older than 9 sharpens tools, beside a man with no teeth and no need for conversation. The space between them is not filled with words, only expectation. And you realize slowly that your presence is not neutral. You are watched. Not obviously, not rudely, but consistently. A woman glances once. A child peeks, then vanishes. Even the dog doesn't bark at you, it simply stares, as if waiting for you to step wrongly. Because here, Every motion is a code. Every nod, every pause, every hand gesture has meaning. You do not know the language. Not truly. You know words, but not ways. And that will be your undoing. You are sent to carry water. Again, this time not alone. A girl walks beside you, no older than 16, balancing the same heavy bucket with twice your grace. She does not speak. Her silence is not cold, it is disciplined. She does not breathe heavily. Her feet do not slip. She is everything you are not, and you feel it. Like a crack in your chest, like a weight behind your eyes. You spill, just a little. A splash, barely enough to notice. But she notices. Her eyes do not meet yours. They lower, almost imperceptibly. And in that glance, you feel shame. A new kind, not embarrassment. Something deeper, older, as if you have dishonored not just yourself, but her, the space around you, the very idea of diligence. Back at the compound, the elders gather, not with ceremony, with stillness. They sit. You do not know why. No one explains. No one gestures for you. You do not join. You kneel by the edge, unsure if you're allowed to look. You try to avert your eyes, but you are curious. A man stands, speaks only one sentence. Another bows, then leaves. That's it. That's the judgment. And in your bones, you know it was final. You don't know what happened, but it was about shame. You feel it, like smoke in the lungs. The man walks past you. His eyes are hollow. His pace is steady. He does not return. No one speaks of it again. And you realize this is not a place where rules are printed. They are absorbed through glances, through silences, through punishments that don't always leave a mark. The girl from before is now scrubbing the floor. She does not stop to stretch her back. Her fingers are red. Her posture, perfect. You bend down to help. She pauses, then nods once. It is the only approval you will get today. Later, you try to laugh. Not loudly, just a chuckle at something absurd, the way the tools are stacked, the way your sleeves won't stay up. But no one joins you. A man nearby glances. His expression does not change, but you feel it again. The sting. You've made too much noise. You've reminded them that you are not one of them. And you realize here, joy is quiet. Pride is invisible. Suffering is private. You try to stop being you, but your body remembers. Your habits, your reflexes, they betray you. You adjust your sitting, but your knees protest. You bow, but too deep, or not deep enough. You listen, but you blink at the wrong time. You nod too soon. And then, just before sunset, a boy drops a ceramic cup. It shatters. The sound is sharp, unforgiving. The entire courtyard freezes. No one speaks. No one moves. The boy kneels, presses his forehead to the floor. No one comforts him. No one helps. He stays there for 5 minutes, 10. And when he finally stands, he does not look anyone in the eye. And the pieces stay where they are until he returns with a broom made of twigs. You watch, and you know that this is how it works. Honor is everything, not the kind from movies. Not a grand gesture, but tiny choices, every moment, every breath, every bow. You do not get second chances. You do not get understanding. You get one try. And if you fail, you carry that failure in your spine, in your shoulders, in the way people stop saying your name. You do not speak of it. You do not explain. You atone. Quietly, always quietly. You lie down that night and you do not sleep. You rehearse every gesture, every nod, every breath, hoping that tomorrow you'll make fewer mistakes. But you won't, because here, even perfection is not enough. It must also be invisible. You are awake before the first bell rings, but not because you slept well. You are awake because the weight of yesterday never left your chest. You are awake because fear is a louder alarm than sound. Outside, the world does not welcome you. It simply exists. The air is heavy with mist. Not the romantic kind, not the cinematic fog that rolls in over fields. This is a mist that clings, that dampens your skin and reminds you how soft you are. A figure moves past you in silence, carrying a bundle of wood. She is small, older, bent, and yet her steps do not falter. You try to match her rhythm, but your foot slips on the wet stone. No one comments. But they hear. They always hear. Breakfast is not a meal. It is a ritual. Rice. Pickled vegetables. Silence. You sit, kneel, bow. You think you are doing it right. But then someone clears their throat. You freeze. The bowl is too far from your chest. You adjust. No one smiles. There are no jokes. No warm greetings. Just acknowledgement. You exist. That is all. The day's task is different. You are assigned to accompany a man you have not met. He does not introduce himself. You do not speak. He leads you down a narrow path, through rows of trees that drip with last night's rain. His pace is slow, deliberate. You are meant to observe, to carry tools, to understand without explanation. He stops by a marker, a wooden post bound in rope. It means something. You do not know what. He begins to work. You follow. Clumsily. The rope burns your hand. You wince. He sees. Says nothing. You work for hours. Your arms ache. Your knees are mud-covered. But he never breaks pace, never sighs, never explains. At midday you sit. He offers no food. You did not bring any. You try not to notice his eyes on you as your stomach growls. You think he pities you. But no, it's not pity. It's disappointment. The kind that's older than language. When the work is done, you return in silence. He nods once before parting. You do not know if it's approval. Back at the compound, a ceremony is beginning. Not for you. You are not part of it. You are told to stand at the back, to observe, to learn. A man kneels in front of a scroll, he reads. Slowly, the room is filled with incense. The smell is thick, earthy, unfamiliar. The scroll details a lineage. Names you do not recognize. Titles that hold weight. A young man bows to the floor. A sword is placed before him. He does not touch it. Not yet. A woman speaks. She lists his duties. They are not requests. They are obligations. Honor your house. Protect the weak. Obey your master. Die well. He bows again. The sword is lifted. For a moment, no one breathes. Then it is done. He is now samurai. You feel nothing like him. You realize suddenly that being a warrior here is not about strength. It is about service, about belonging entirely to something larger than yourself. A family, a code, a moment. You do not belong. You are not part of any of it. And you feel it in your ribs, in the way people pass by you without looking, in the way you flinch before every step, unsure if it's permitted. That evening, a girl is punished, not publicly, but you hear it. The sound of quiet words, the sound of shame being named. You do not know what she did. Perhaps she was late. Perhaps she forgot to bow. Perhaps she laughed. The next day she walks with her eyes lower, her voice softer, her hands more precise. She has learned. You wonder if you ever will. There is no room here for questioning. The rules are not written. They are absorbed. Through posture, through glances, through what is not said. You make another mistake. You reach for something too quickly. The man beside you pulls back. Not harshly, just enough. And you feel the sting of it for hours. Not because it hurt, but because you forgot yourself. You forgot your place. And here, that is the worst kind of forgetting. The sky darkens. The air cools. You are given a task sweeping the path. Simple, but not easy. The broom is awkward. The path uneven. You try to hurry, and then you stop. Because hurrying is wrong. Everything here has a pace, a rhythm. You slow down, sweep again. And for a moment, no one corrects you. That is the closest thing to peace you've had all day. Night falls. You return to your mat. You eat in silence. You do not know what the food is. You do not ask. The taste is plain, but it warms you. A small mercy. The others settle. The room stills. And you are left with your thoughts. You are not used to this much silence, not used to being so small, so invisible, so alone, and yet something in you begins to shift. Not comfort, not understanding, but awareness. That this place does n ought to bend to you. That here you are not special, not exempt from rules, not above expectation. You close your eyes. The mat creaks. The walls breathe. A bell chimes once in the distance. You sleep. Not deeply, but without resistance, because tomorrow will come, and with it, more duty, more silence, more chances to try again, or fail again. But for now, you rest. Because that too is part of the rhythm. There is a point where resistance becomes exhaustion, and exhaustion becomes routine. That point comes quietly, without ceremony. You do not notice it happen. You only realize it after the fact. The way your hands no longer flinch when someone corrects you. The way your steps now match the tempo of the others without thinking. The way you bow without remembering the first time you did it right. You begin to wake not with dread, but with awareness. The world is still sharp, still watching, but you are no longer new, no longer entirely foreign. There is dirt beneath your nails, and you do not care. There is stiffness in your knees, and you accept it. The robe they gave you now fits. Or perhaps your body has changed to fit it. You no longer try to speak, not because you've given up, but because words are heavy here, too heavy to be wasted. You listen instead. And when you do speak, it is low, brief, measured. You do not smile as often, not because you are unhappy, but because smiling is rare here, and when it happens, it means something. You do not laugh. You observe. You adjust. Your back is straighter. Your voice is softer. Your thoughts quieter. At night, when the others lie in rows, breathing slowly, you no longer feel the need to stay awake. The silence no longer presses down. It holds you, anchors you. You sleep. And when you wake, it is with the rhythm of the bell, not the panic in your chest. You are sent to gather water. The task is simple. You do not resent it. You know how to hold the bucket so it does not splash. You know the path well now, the stones, the turns, the places where the moss is thick and the ground dips. You see a child on the path, bowing to an elder. She is small, serious, perfect in her posture. You pause, just a moment, to watch, and then move on. At the river, your reflection startles you. Not because it is unfamiliar, but because it is not. You expected to still see the person who arrived here uncertain, wide-eyed, foreign, but now your face is calm, tighter. You look like them. Or maybe you just look like you after. When you return, someone nods at you, just once. You nod back. You feel no triumph, no joy. Just the click of another gear sliding into place. In the afternoon, there is training. Not for you, but you are allowed to watch. Young men in rows, wooden swords in hand, striking in unison. Their cries echo across the field. Not wild, not angry, focused. You can feel the intention in every movement. Precision over power. Stillness before action. Control, even in aggression. A master walks the line. He does not shout, he does not strike. A look is enough, a gesture, a correction. And each boy receives it like scripture. There is no rebellion, no question. Only improvement. You wonder what it would be like to live like that, every motion purposeful, every flaw seen and addressed, every praise rare but earned. You wonder what it would feel like to trust your body completely, not as an ornament, but as a tool. Later, you are asked to assist in the preparation of ink, a small thing, but vital. You grind the stick against the stone, slowly, carefully, adding water drop by drop. The monk beside you watches, not judging, simply present. He does not speak, but when he sees your rhythm steady, your pressure correct, he breathes out once. You take it as approval. He takes the ink and leaves. You are not told thank you. You do not expect it. Evening falls. The lanterns are lit. You walk the perimeter, as instructed, making sure the gates are locked. the doors secure. It is a task of trust, one that once would not have been given to you. Now it is. You do not feel pride, you feel responsibility. And it is heavier than pride. The moon is high. You sit on the steps. The compound is quiet. You hear the wind in the bamboo. The distant murmur of a drum. You think about how far you've come, not in distance, but in silence, in obedience, in understanding. You still do not belong. Not truly. You never will. But you are no longer drowning. You float. You drift. You survive. That is more than most. You close your eyes. You hear a child laugh somewhere inside. Just once. Then silence again. The sound stays with you. You do not smile, but you remember it. You rise. Return to your mat. Lie down. Breathe slow. The world is still. And so are you. There is a silence and shame that weighs heavier than any punishment. In feudal Japan, shame was not something you merely felt inside. It wrapped around your life, clung to your clothes, altered the way others looked at you, spoke to you, or stopped speed aching to you at all. It could begin with something small, a misplaced word, a bowed head that did not dip low enough, a task done too slowly or too quickly. There were no warnings, not in the way you'd expect, just a tightening in the air, a stillness, averted eyes. The person next to you, once kind, now quiet. A superior who no longer calls your name but gestures without looking at you. And you begin to vanish. You are still there, still breathing, still working, but you become a shadow. You hear your name less often. You are asked to do less, not as a mercy, but as a mark. The fewer tasks, the less trust. You try to correct it. You try to do better. But nothing you do is acknowledged. Not your silence, not your effort, not your tears. You are invisible, and it is a punishment no one names. If your shame is greater, if your mistake is known, undeniable, spoken aloud, then the rituals are different. Public, formal, and frightening in their precision. You are made to kneel, head low, hands on the ground, not just once, but over and over, until your body knows the position better than it knows standing. You may be told what you did, you may not, but everyone else knows, and everyone else watches. You may be stripped of a sash, of a color, of a token, something you wore to signify a role, an honor, a small place in the world structure. And when it is taken, it is not the item that hurts. It is the absence, the emptiness it leaves behind. You are not physically harmed, not yet, but that would almost be easier. A bruise fades, a cut closes, but shame lingers. It seeps into your dreams, into your food, into the spaces between sounds. You eat alone, you sit last, you sleep furthest from the door, and still you try. You rise early, you scrub longer, you bow deeper, you speak less, hoping, always hoping, that the tide will turn, that someone will nod, will look, will speak your name again. Sometimes they do. Slowly, a task is handed to you, a word is spoken in your direction, and you feel the sting of relief like a burn. Other times, the silence never breaks. And you know you will live the rest of your time as a reminder, a caution, a shadow walking among the obedient. For samurai, the stakes were higher still. Their honor was not just personal, it was ancestral, sacred. And when it cracked, there was only one path left. Seppuku, ritual self-destruction. Not an act of despair, but of control, of reclamation, of dying with the very thing you had lost unarrested in your final breath. It was done in silence, with witnesses, with ceremonial blades, and it was expected, not feared. A boy could watch his father perform it, a student his master. No screams, no refusal, just the final trembling arc of the blade. But you are not a samurai. You are just a body among other bodies, surviving. And so your shame is quieter, but no less sharp. You sweep the courtyard, your hands blister, your knees ache, and still no one speaks. You see others laugh softly over rice. You watch them nod to each other, touch shoulders. You do not miss the food. You miss the permission to belong. Once, someone drops a cup. You reach to help. They flinch, as if your fingers might stain theirs. You learn not to reach. You learn not to look. You learn to exist in the periphery, and it changes you. You begin to move with caution, not from fear, but from understanding. The world here is not loud. It is precise, deliberate, and it does not forgive easily. You are not hated. You are simply beneath notice. That, you learn, is worse. Time passes. You do not know how much. Days melt into each other. Your own voice becomes a stranger. You find comfort in routines, not joy, but structure. You know where to stand, how to hold a bucket, how to clean without leaving streaks, how to fold your mat with square corners. These are your markers, your anchors. They remind you that you still exist, that you still serve. And that, perhaps, is enough. You wake before the bell. You are not allowed to be late, but more than that, you have trained yourself not to need the warning of time. You rise in the dark when the chill clings to your fingers and your breath curls in front of you like mist. You fold your sleeping mat in complete silence, your hands working automatically, corners sharp, lines perfect. The mat will be inspected. But even if it weren't, even if no one saw, you would do it the same. Because your discipline is not for show, it is for survival. In a world where the smallest flaw is remembered longer than any success, where one misstep can echo for months in the quiet looks of others, you learn to eliminate error not through fear, but through repetition. You move through your routine like a shadow. Your body remembers every movement. How long to scrub the floor before the grain of the wood begins to rise? How much water to carry without spilling? How to bow to a superior so your spine curves just enough to communicate respect, but not weakness. You speak only when spoken to. Your voice is soft. Your eyes never rise unless requested. And no one congratulates you for this. There is no praise, no smile, no nod of approval. But you are not seeking affirmation. You are seeking neutrality. To be unseen is not a punishment. It is a goal. Because to be noticed is to be vulnerable. You learn not to attract attention, not with your posture, not with your voice, not with your emotions. Joy, sorrow, angsthesa, indulgences. In feudal Japan, they are also risks. If you are too happy, others may grow suspicious. Too sad, and they may see weakness. Too proud, and you invite judgment. So you live in the space between. You are a vessel, doing what is required, feeling what is allowed, and when feelings come that are too large to ignore homesickness, fear, loneliness, you sit with them in silence, hands folded, back straight until they pass. You do not cry. Crying is noise. Noise is disruption. Disruption invites correction. You do not want to be corrected. Correction means attention. Attention means exposure. You are not ready for that. You do not know if you ever will be. You have learned to read the room without moving your eyes, to sense the tension in someone's shoulders, the pause in their breath, the subtle delay in their step. These are clues. These are signs. They tell you when to move, when to speak, when to retreat. And if you learn to listen closely enough, you can navigate entire days without causing a single ripple. That is your goal. Not accomplishment, not greatness, but seamless existence. You become a part of the environment, like a rock in the garden, like the wind in the trees, present but unobtrusive, necessary but quiet. The others notice, not with words, but with space. You are allowed to stand closer. Your name is used once or twice. A small sign of trust, a nod, and it means everything. Because it means you are doing well. You are becoming part of the rhythm, the unseen dance that moves beneath every gesture, every routine. You are beginning to belong, but belonging is fragile. One mistake can change everything. So you watch yourself, constantly. You monitor your own breathing. You correct your stance. You rehearse your words before speaking them. You eat slowly, precisely, so as not to spill a single grain of rice. You never sit until invited. You never leave until dismissed. And even then, you bow twice. You live in a world of rules, some spoken, most not, and your survival depends on understanding all of them, even the ones no one tells you, especially those. So you study, not books, but people, the way they stand, the way they breathe, the timing of their movements. You notice when the tone shifts, when the silence changes temperature, and you adjust. Every moment, you adjust. Because that is the cost of acceptance here. Constant vigilance, constant restraint. You think, sometimes, of your old life, of laughter, of spontaneity, of being able to ask questions without consequence. But you do not dwell. That life is gone. And this one has its own kind of peace, a quiet certainty, a rhythm that, once learned, can soothe even the most restless thoughts. You find comfort in the sound of sandals on wood, in the weight of a cleanly tied sash, in the discipline of repetition. The days blend together, but not in a way that feels empty. Each one is a test, a lesson, a chance to be better at being invisible. And in this world, that is a form of power. Not the power to command, but the power to endure, to adapt, to survive. And maybe, in time, to thrive not loudly, but with grace. You learn to smile without showing teeth, to feel pride without expression, to carry your past like a stone in your sleeve present, but hidden. You are becoming someone else. Or maybe you are becoming more yourself than ever before. Stripped of noise, of performance, of indulgence, you are left with discipline, precision, presence. And in that, you begin to understand the stillness of this world, its beauty, its quiet brutality, its unwavering demand for control. You rise before the bell. You move through your routine, and you do not wait for praise. You do not need it. You are exactly where you need to be. And that is enough. You do not speak unless required. Days pass where your mouth does not open, where your thoughts echo only in your chest. You begin to forget the cadence of your own voice, the way you once laughed, how it felt to raise a question. Now, questions are dangerous. Questions are delays. The rules are not to be examined. They are to be absorbed, practiced, and repeated. You bow when others bow. You rise when others rise. You eat in silence, kneel in silence, sleep in silence. There is comfort in this. Predictability, stability. You do not fear surprise because there are none. Every hour has its task. Every task has its rhythm, and you have learned them all. The movements of your hands are efficient, mechanical, graceful. Your breathing aligns with the pulse of T. He group. You become a shadow among shadows, a motion in the current. Even your dreams become orderly. You do not dream of rebellion or escape. You dream of perfect execution of floors that shine, of tea poured without a drop spilled, of bows that arc precisely. And when you wake, your body resumes its rhythm without hesitation. The morning chill no longer bothers you. The stiffness in your knees from long kneeling is a familiar ache. The hunger between sparse meals is not discomfort. It is a reminder to remain light, agile, controlled. You do not ask for more. To ask is to disturb. Disturbance leads to reprimand. Reprimand leads to shame. Shame leads to danger. You have seen others falter. One misstep, a wrong greeting, a bowl set with the wrong hand, a moment of inattention, and suddenly the room changes. Eyes avere. Distance grows. Their names are whispered differently or not at all. You do not want that. You carry your name like a secret. Softly, carefully. It is not written. It is not spoken. It exists only inside you, and even there, it fades. You begin to measure yourself not by what you think, but by how little you must be corrected, by how quietly you move through space, by how often others forget your presence, and then remember it only with a nod of approval. That is success now, not praise, but lack of disapproval, invisibility, punctuated by silent permission. You learn to anticipate needs before they are voiced. A towel offered at the right time. A scroll delivered before it's requested. Tea poured just as the thought of thirst arises. These acts are not noticed aloud, but they are remembered. They build trust without words, and trust here is fragile and rare. You guard it carefully. You do not speak of it. You simply continue. There is a freedom in obedience. Not the freedom of choice, but the freedom from uncertainty, from failure, from exposure. You walk paths that have been walked 1,000 times before. You wear garments stitched to the same design. You chant prayers that have echoed for generations. And in doing so, you disappear. Not in loss, but in unity. You are no longer one voice among many. You are one thread in the fabric, one note in the hum of continuity. And that is peace. Not happiness, but peace. The kind that comes from knowing your place, from doing it well, from never questioning why. You forget the seasons. They blur. Autumn turns to winter, turns to spring, and you are still kneeling, still sweeping, still bowing. You count time in tasks, in the wear on your sandals, in the thinning bristles of your broom. The world beyond becomes myth, a place of noise and choice and imbalance. You do not wish to return there. You would not know how. You have learned how to exist without desire, without voice, without error. You breathe, you move, you serve. And in this repetition, you find a kind of immortality, a way to be without becoming, to act without imprint, to live without being seen. You are a whisper, a ripple, a step in the sequence, and that is enough. You do not sit as you once did. In feudal Japan, sitting is not a pause but a ritual. The way your knees fold beneath you, the angle of your spine, the line of your neck, these are statements, not of comfort, but of intent, of honor, of silence. You kneel in seiza, toes curled under, your weight resting on your heels. Your hands rest gently on your thighs, fingers slightly curled, thumbs never quite touching. Your eyes stay low. The floor becomes familiar. Tatami straw fibers leave gentle lines on your ankles, reminders of how long you've been still. And you remain still, because movement is noticed, because fidgeting implies doubt, and in a world ruled by appearance, doubt is dangerous. You learn this early. Even children are corrected with a firm look, a silent repositioning of hands. Your own teacher once pushed your shoulder back wordlessly until your posture spoke obedience. That moment still echoes. You thought it shame then. Now you understand it was shaping. Your body is no longer yours. It is a tool of communication, and its message must always be calm, neutral, accepting. You never slouch. You never lean. You never collapse into a seat with the weight of fatigue. Even exhaustion is worn with dignity. You walk with measured steps, soft heels, toes aligned. You pass through doorways with a slight bow, never turning your back to anyone of higher rank. The turn itself matters. Clockwise in this room, counterclockwise in another. Each space has rules. Each rule protects balance. You do not question them. You internalize them. They become muscle memory, flowing through your limbs like breath. And when others watch, they do not see struggle. They see serenity, a stillness so complete it looks like peace. But it is not peace. It is practice. Your knees ache. Your back tightens. The quiet burns after an hour of kneeling. But you do not shift. Not unless everyone else shifts. To move first is to be impolite. To draw notice. And in this world, to be noticed is to be wrong. So you stay still. You become invisible by being perfect. Your gaze never lingers. Eye contact is rare, and when it occurs, it must be brief, respectful. You lower your eyes not from shame but from custom. You observe the world through the corners of your vision, through the movements of sleeves and the flickers of lanterns. You see enough. You hear enough. There is no need for more. You are not meant to be curious. Curiosity can offend. You are meant to be present. Not engaging, but available. Not enthusiastic, but prepared. There is beauty in this stillness, a rhythm in repetition. The way the mats feel under your knees each morning, the weight of your sleeves as you pour tea, the softness of your steps across wooden floors. You belong to the space, and the space belongs to the moment. That is how time passes now, in moments, in rituals, in silence. You do not sigh, you do not groan. Even pain has no place in your expression. The most you allow is a controlled breath, a slow exhale that blends into the air like smoke. You begin to understand that control is more than strength. It is survival. Those who master it are remembered. Those who lose it are replaced. There is always someone more graceful, more disciplined, more quiet. And so you refine every movement, every breath. You eat without noise. You do not scrape bowls or slurp broth unless the setting allows. You chew slowly, mouth closed, gaze lowered. Even enjoyment is restrained. Pleasure is private. Public life is for composure. And you live publicly now, even in private, because walls are thin, because servants listen, because silence has ears. You become your own monitor. You correct yourself before others must. You catch your foot before it drags. You fold your sleeves before they brush against ink or rice. You bow not just with your back, but with your spirit, letting the curve of humility pass through your ribs. You are not faking this. You are becoming this. Each correction becomes a layer. Each day, another thread in the cloth of discipline, until the person you were the one who lounged, who sprawled, who laughed freely seems foreign, unfitting. You look back on that self with the same detached observation you give a cracked dish, once useful, now discarded, now replaced with something smoother, cleaner, quieter. You begin to crave the approval that comes with being unnoticed. When no one corrects you, that is the reward. When no one speaks your name, that is the success. When your presence is acknowledged only by the lack of disturbance, you are doing well. And in this new language of posture and silence, you learn to speak with your stillness. You say, I understand by bowing at just the right angle. You say, I am sorry, by how long you stay lowered. You say, I have learned, by not repeating the mistake. And most of all, you say, I belong here, by how little space you take. That is the key. To take less, to speak less, to need less. Until you are so seamless with the room, they forget you weren't always there. You begin to notice how the world moves without you. In feudal Japan, movement is not an expression of freedom, but of permission. You don't simply walk across a room. You are allowed to. And when you do, it must be done with the grace of silence. Your feet barely leave the ground. You glide, not stomp. The soles of your sandals whisper against the wood, not out of stealth, but respect. The building listens. The people listen. You learn to be quiet, not because you fear punishment, but because sound implies need, and need implies weakness. You step behind, not ahead. You let others pass first. You pause longer than you think you need to. Because arriving too soon is as disruptive as arriving late. There is a right pace, a right angle to turn, a correct way to open a sliding door without dragging it, a proper moment to bow. Not too early, not too late. You practice these things alone until they look effortless, but they never are. Effort becomes invisible only through repetition. Your shoulders stay low, your elbows close, your sleeves don't sway too much. When you carry something, you do not clutch it, you balance it. When you hand it over, your eyes drop, your breath stills. You do not make eye contact unless they are your equal or lower, and even then, briefly. You adjust your steps to match the rank of those near you. Walking faster than a superior is an insult. Walking slower is laziness. Your body learns to float in synchrony with others. You exist in rhythm, in formations. When you sit, you do so in alignment with the room, never diagonal, never loose. The room has memory. It remembers misplacement. You are taught to turn corners without exposing your back. You learn to bow at different angles, 15 degrees, 30 degrees, 45. Each has a purpose. Each says something. A deeper bow is not always better. It must be appropriate, measured, timed. You don't run, even when you are late, especially then. Running would suggest you did not plan well. You hurry in your stillness. You become efficient without haste. Even urgency must appear calm. You learn the geography of attention, when to be seen, and more importantly, when not to be. Sometimes your absence is the highest form of presence. When someone enters the room and you are already waiting in silence, that is noticed. That is power. But it must look natural, never eager, never expectant. When a senior enters, you do not rise abruptly. You flow upward, like mist lifting from water. You give space without moving away. You remain near, yet unobtrusive. This balance becomes your skill. You are always adjusting, but never obviously. Your eyes scan without turning your head. You monitor your own silhouette in the light of lanterns. You listen to footsteps approaching from across the wooden halls. You know who walks how, the weight, the rhythm. You recognize status by sound. You stand at the correct distance. You do not stand directly before anyone unless addressed. Angles matter. You angle yourself slightly to the side, deferent but not dismissive. When you are spoken to, your replies are soft, minimal, weighted with pause. A simple hi can hold a dozen meanings depending on how you bow your head with it. Sometimes the most powerful response is none at all. A breath, a stillness, a lack of resistance. This is how agreement is shown, through lack of opposition. You are a stone in a stream. You are shaped without breaking. You mirror expectations without becoming hollow. That is the paradox. You are not losing yourself. You are building another version, one that survives in a world where failure is remembered long after success. You don't ask for direction twice. You remember, you rehearse, you anticipate. This is not paranoia. It is etiquette. You anticipate so others don't need to react. You offer before being asked. You serve before being summoned. Your actions become invisible because they never interrupt. Your movement stops being seen. Only its absence becomes noticeable. And that is the goal. To be irreplaceable through seamlessness, a cup that never spills, a floor that never creaks. You begin to carry silence like a second robe. It flows behind you. It enters before you. People feel it. And in that silence, you find a strange kind of peace. Not comfort, but certainty. You know your role. You know your lines. The world becomes a stage you no longer fear because your performance is perfect or close enough. Each day you move without incident is a success. Each hour without rebuke is a reward. You learn to value neutrality over approval. You stop craving praise. You seek stillness. You prefer it. Because in stillness, there is safety. And after a while, you begin to believe that stillness is who you are. That the person you once were, the one who spoke freely, moved loudly, existed unapologetically, was not erased, but simply unnecessary here. Eventually, your body forgets it once moved freely. In the beginning, it was difficult to sit still for hours without shifting. Now you do it without thought. The ache that once gnawed at your knees when kneeling has turned into a kind of dull presence, like a familiar shadow that lives inside your bones. You don't fight it anymore, you coexist. When you bow, your spine knows the precise depth without conscious effort. Your arms fall into place naturally. Your head tilts with the correct angle. Your breath slows on command. You have rehearsed everything so many times that nothing surprises your muscles anymore. They respond before you do. You become a dancer whose choreography is life itself, though the dance is slow, unhurried, almost invisible to outsiders. But to those around you, those within the same quiet current, every movement is loud with meaning. A pause speaks, a glance whispers, a hesitation screams. You understand now why nothing is left to chance. In a society this structured, unpredictability is danger. Even joy must be tempered. Too wide a smile can be seen as arrogance. Too much enthusiasm as foolishness. You learn to shape even your happiness into acceptable forms. A quiet nod, a softening of the eyes, a breath that lingers longer than usual. That is all. You no longer reach out to touch things. You observe. You wait. You let objects come to you by invitation. And when they do, you accept them with both hands, one to receive, one to show respect. You hold them close to your chest, as if everything given is sacred. In truth, it often is. Because in this world, attention is a currency, and being seen is not a right, it is a gift. You remember being louder once, laughing freely, interrupting, moving through the world as if it were a playground. You look back on that version of yourself like a stranger in a dream. That person would not survive here, not because of punishment, but because of exclusion. Silence is not enforced with violence. It is enforced with distance. Averted eyes, a room that no longer invites your presence, a name that goes unspoken. The fear of dishonor is not the fear of pain. It is the fear of being forgotten. So you stay within the lines. You become careful. You say less. You need less. You smile when expected. You leave when dismissed. You bow more deeply when unsure. Over time, this becomes normal. Not in the way habits do, but in the way tides reshape a shoreline. Slowly, without permission, without announcement. Just one day, you look up and realize you haven't spoken your own name in weeks. That when you walk, you no longer hear your footsteps. That when someone calls for assistance, your body responds before your thoughts do. The self dissolves, not entirely, but enough. Enough to keep the world from rejecting you. Enough to stay within the flow. There are moments quiet, brief, when you wonder if this is survival or surrender. But the question itself is dangerous. So you fold it away like a note you'll never send. The people around you live the same way. You see it in their eyes. The way they glance sideways before speaking. The way they never speak first. The way they accept correction with a nod so small it's almost imagined. Children learn this language early. They are not told to behave. They are shown how to vanish into obedience, to be useful, to be respectful, to exist without friction. Even the animals trained dogs, temple horses move with this same subdued grace. The entire world here breathes in quiet rhythm. The trees sway gently. The wind barely stirs. The bamboo fences creak softly under their own weight. Even nature knows to hush itself. You begin to appreciate this hush. It becomes your shelter. Not from danger, but from uncertainty. Predictability is safety. Silence is clarity. Stillness is peace. You align yourself with these truths, not because you must, but because resisting them feels like shouting in a temple. And you no longer want to shout. You want to belong. And so, you perfect the ritual. You wake at the right time. You clean your corner. You sweep the path even when no one is watching. You fold your garments precisely. You sit where expected. You eat in silence. You thank without speaking. You exist without disturbing. You are part of the pattern now, a small brushstroke in a larger painting. And you realize that, in this world, that may be the highest form of success, to fit so seamlessly that you are no longer separate. You are the gesture. You are the silence. You are the stillness others rely on to feel balanced. And somehow, in that erasure, you find yourself. Not the self you once were, but the self you needed to be to survive here. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. There were days in feudal Japan when silence was the loudest sound in the room. You would sit in the company of others, a dozen people gathered in one small chamber, and yet it would feel as though no one was truly present. Breathing was subdued, eyes lowered, hands resting gently on the lap. No one moved unnecessarily. No one spoke unless addressed. It wasn't shyness, it wasn't fear. It was etiquette. And under etiquette lived emotion, wrapped, sealed, and locked away. From the moment you were old enough to carry a wooden practice sword, you were also trained in the suppression of your inner world. Joy was muted. Grief was internalized. Anger was folded into obedience. The display of emotion was a disruption to harmony, and harmony was more sacred than truth. If your father died, you bowed. If you fell in love, you smiled with your eyes and said nothing. If you were humiliated, you lowered your head and stayed still until the moment passed. No one asked you how you felt. No one needed to. Feelings were seen as private storms, weathered in silence. Even in moments of triumph, winning a tournament, being praised by a superior, the correct response was humility. A slight bow, a whispered thank you. Anything more was considered excessive. To cry in public was shameful. To laugh too loudly was immature. To speak your mind without permission was reckless. Instead, people learned to communicate through gestures, through posture, through the way they poured tea. A slightly longer pause before handing over a cup. A bow just half a degree deeper. A silence that lingered a little too long. These were the languages of pain, of longing, of apology. You watched your elders closely, mimicking their restraint. You saw the way your mother folded laundry with a precision that hinted at exhaustion. The way your older brother stared at the floor for hours after a failed exam, never saying a word. The way your teacher smiled while correcting you, even though his hands trembled from the pressure. No one ever said, "I'm tired." They just moved slower. No one said, "I'm hurt." They just worked harder. Even love was unspoken. A parent's affection was shown by waking earlier to prepare your meal. A lover's care by walking a few steps behind you to protect your shadow. A friend's concern by silently placing an umbrella beside your door before a storm. Everything was subtle, everything was indirect, and in that indirectness, emotions changed shape. You began to feel things not as they were, but as they could be understood through gesture. Happiness became a soft warmth in your chest when your mentor nodded at you from across the courtyard. Sadness became the absence of conversation when your companions stopped visiting. Anger became a tightening in your gut that never found words, only deeper bows. Over time, you began to doubt your own feelings. If no one asked, were they real? If no one noticed, did they matter? You became your own mirror, your own witness. In the stillness of the tea room, in the hush of temple halls, in the quiet discipline of morning rituals, your emotions sat with you like quiet ghosts. You didn't speak to them, but you acknowledged them. With time, they stopped asking to be seen. They simply stayed. Your dreams became more vivid. In sleep, your emotions lived louder lives. You wept in your dreams. You shouted. You embraced. And then you woke up and knelt beside your bedding, folded it precisely, and resumed your silence. You bowed to your elders. You watered the garden. You kept your face still. In rare moments, you caught glimpses of others breaking, a servant's eyes welling with tears before turning away, a samurai gripping his sword too tightly during a ceremony, a child biting their lip until it bled. But these flashes disappeared as quickly as they arrived, like ripples on a pond, and no one mentioned them. To bring them up would be to dishonor the person's effort to contain them. You learned to protect each other's silence, to guard it, to honor it, even if it cost understanding, even if it created distance. The price of peace in this world was invisibility, and everyone paid it, even when it hurt, especially when it hurt. There were poets who captured emotion with metaphor, writing of rivers and stones and wind, never naming the feeling directly. There were actors in no plays who wore masks so the audience could imagine the emotion, not see it. There were monks who meditated for days, not to find clarity, but to dissolve the self entirely. Emotion was never erased, it was refined, distilled, transformed into gesture, art, discipline, and in that transformation, it became part of the collective quiet. You were not allowed to be the center. You were a thread in a larger fabric. To weep was to tear the cloth. To rage was to scorch the pattern. So you smiled gently. You bowed often. You waited to speak. And in doing so, you became fluent in silence. A language that said everything by saying nothing at all. It's hard to explain the way you begin to vanish when your feelings have no place to live. In feudal Japan, your identity was not yours alone. It belonged to your house, your clan, your family name. You were born into a role, and feelings unpredictable, uncontainable feelings had no part in the script. So you learned early to fold yourself inward, to smooth your voice, to measure your steps, to keep your inner landscape hidden beneath polite phrases and perfect timing. But something happened to you in that process. You became quieter, yes, but also smaller. The parts of you that wanted to speak, to cry, to argue, to laugh, they didn't disappear. They went underground. They became shadows. You could feel them moving inside you, pacing back and forth like caged animals. And some days, if the silence stretched too long, they started to scratch at the walls. For some people, it began with insomnia. They would lie awake for hours, staring at the paper ceiling, their mind racing with conversations they never had, arguments they never voiced, apologies they never received. For others, it came through tension, the kind that never left their shoulders, never relaxed their jaw, a stiffness that even the most disciplined meditation could not release. And then there were those who broke, quietly, without spectacle. A merchant who suddenly refused to open his shop, a daughter who stared blankly through her wedding ceremony, a samurai who offered a flawless bow before walking into the forest and never returning. These moments were not spoken of, not because they were shameful, but because there were no words gentle enough to hold them. Society was structured to function without disruption, and yet the human heart has its own schedule. You cannot schedule grief. You cannot delay longing. You cannot indefinitely postpone your own truth. So what did people do? They redirected, sublimated. If you could not speak, you carved. If you could not cry, you wrote poems. If you could not shout, you danced behind a mask. Entire art forms were born out of silence. The no stage became a place where anguish was expressed through one step forward and one backward. The ink of calligraphy held more emotion than any spoken phrase. The stillness of a tea master's hands trembled with invisible stories. A potter shaped not just clay, but his inner world, a world that no one else would ever see, but that lived forever in the curve of a bowl. And yet, even art had its limits. There were feelings too raw, too jagged to be smoothed into haiku. On those days, you simply endured. You walked a little farther past the village boundary. You sat by the river and said nothing for hours. You watched the water carry fallen blossoms, wondering if your feelings too could drift away unnoticed. Some whispered to the wind, hoping it might carry their sorrow to the mountains. Some practiced misogi, stepping under icy waterfalls to cleanse the ache they could not name. Some remained quiet for so long, they began to forget the shape of their own voice. When they finally spoke, it startled them. It was higher, or lower, or slower, as though it belonged to someone else. And maybe it did. Maybe they had become someone else entirely. A more acceptable version, a quieter echo, but not gone, never fully gone. You couldn't erase yourself, only fold yourself smaller, until one day you no longer fit in your own skin. Then what? You served tea. You bowed. You breathed. You waited, hoping that maybe someone would see you. Not the version of you, not the mask, but the person. Entire lifetimes passed like this. A farmer who never told anyone he wanted to see the sea. A wife who never said she didn't want children. A scholar who always wished to become a monk. They obeyed. They performed. And then they died. And only in the objects they left behind, the perfectly tended garden, the shelf of unread poetry, the faded ink drawing of waves, did anyone ever guess who they truly were. You wouldn't last a day in that world. Not because you're weak, but because you're used to being heard. You're used to choice, to reaction, to questions like, "How are you?" and answers that matter. In feudal Japan, silence was not absence. It was structure, but it had a cost. A deep, silent cost. One that no one ever named, but everyone carried. Like a second shadow. always behind them. And in the stillest moments, just before sleep, just after rain, you could feel it stir. Not loud, not wild, just there, waiting. There were moments in feudal Japan when something unexpected happened. A glance lingered longer than it should have. A servant brushed fingers with a noble when passing a scroll. A child looked back one more time before disappearing into the path of their arranged fate. These were not great rebellions. They were not declarations. They were accidents, nearly, breaches in the pattern. But they mattered. Because in a world that prized stillness, the smallest ripple meant everything. Imagine living a life where you could not touch someone without purpose, where every motion had meaning, every pause was scripted. And then imagine someone looking at you, not as a role, not as a duty, but as you. Just for a second. It was rare. It was dangerous. But it happened. A hand that lingered a moment longer as it helped you to your feet. A question whispered during the silence of a tea ceremony, not loud enough to be heard by others, but just enough to break through the wall between you. Are you tired? Are you happy? No answers came. But the questions hung in the air like incense, fragile and sacred. You might remember them your entire life. Some people kept these moments locked inside like treasures. They were never spoken of, never written down. But in the long years that followed, in the ache of unspoken dreams, they returned like ghosts. A warmth that had no season. A wordless kindness that made silence feel less heavy. The more structured your life, the more powerful these slips became. A young woman in Kyoto, bound for a marriage that frightened her, once passed a stranger in the market who bowed too deeply. She never saw him again, but she remembered the way his eyes held her fear. A soldier on patrol found a small bundle of rice left where no one should have walked. He never knew who left it, but that meal kept him warm for weeks. An old widow, expected to remain invisible, was once asked by a monk if she missed her childhood. He didn't wait for her answer, but she wept for days. These stories were not told. They were passed in feelings, in how someone prepared your bedding, in the way they added an extra plum to your tray, in the space they left between their footsteps so you could walk beside them, not behind. Kindness had to be quiet, because anything louder might break the spell, might call attention, might be questioned. And so, it remained gentle. And because it was gentle, it survived. These fleeting connections, they were the secret lifelines. The reason someone kept going. The reason someone endured another winter, another duty, another ritual. It wasn't the rules that sustained people. It was the moments between the rules. The cracks in the wall where light slipped in, but they were fragile. A single word spoken too loudly could turn beauty into scandal. A gesture too visible could become betrayal. So they lived carefully, with eyes that noticed everything, and mouths that said nothing. Sometimes, love lasted a lifetime without a name. It passed from glance to glance, from folded fabric to steaming bowls of soup left on cold mornings. And when it ended, not in fire, not in confession, but simply by drifting apart, it left behind no ruins. Only memories so soft they felt like dreams. You wouldn't last a day in that world. Not because you couldn't be silent, but because your silence wouldn't mean the same thing. It wouldn't hold centuries of weight, generations of expectation. You could learn the bows. You could master the tea. But the patience, the endless patience to wait for something so small, so quiet, and to hold it sacred, that was something else entirely. And yet, perhaps it is not too late. Perhaps some part of you understands this already. The joy of a slow ritual, the ache of an unspoken kindness, the bittersweet truth that the best moments in life are sometimes the ones that pass without witness, without noise, without record. Just like this story. Just like this moment now, passing softly through your ears, touching your heart not with facts, but with stillness. You are listening. That alone is enough. That alone is everything. In the soft folds of the countryside, where roads curved like brushstrokes and mist clung to the soil before sunrise, there lived thousands of people whose names were never written down, whose faces dissolved into history like morning dew. These were the farmers, the gatherers, the fishermen, the potters, the weavers, the silent hands behind the banners, the feet beneath the palanquins. They woke when the rooster crowed, not because they chose to, but because sleep was a luxury they could not afford. A day lost was food lost, and food lost was life slipping further into the uncertain. They moved through routines so deeply embedded into the earth that their own memories sometimes could not separate one day from another. The fields did not care for poetry. The soil did not care for ambition. It demanded sweat, cracked hands, bent backs, and a heart that beat quietly through the weight of repetition. Rain was both blessing and curse. Too little, and crops shriveled like forgotten prayers. Too much, and everything turned to rot. When it rained, they listened to the sound of droplets on bamboo rooftops and waited, counting each one like coins. When it was dry, they lifted water from rivers by hand, watching their reflections distort in the ripples, always unsure whether the face looking back belonged to them or to every ancestor before them. Their homes were made of wood and paper and modest dreams. They did not lock their doors because they owned little that could be taken. What they feared was not theft, but silence. The silence of a bad harvest. The silence of a child who no longer cried. The silence of a village losing its voice to hunger. Meals were humble, measured not in flavor but in availability. A bowl of millet, some pickled radish, a cup of tea if fortune smiled. And yet, even in poverty, there was rhythm. A kind of music in the cycle of planting and reaping, of mending and wearing, of boiling and cooling. They found beauty in watching steam rise from wooden bowls in winter, in the sight of fireflies blinking over flooded rice paddies, in the whisper of silk drying on lines strung between trees. They laughed, though softly. They grieved, though quickly. Life did not grant them the time to linger in any emotion too long. There was always something to do. Always something that would not wait. They did not ask why. They did not dream of rebellion. But when a child was born, they planted a tree. When someone died, they folded paper birds and let them float down rivers. When the full moon rose, they stepped outside and watched it together, saying nothing, feeling everything. They respected the seasons not because they loved them, but because they had no choice. The seasons ruled them more than any samurai ever could. And each season carried its own demands, its own cruelties. Spring asked for preparation. Summer asked for endurance. Autumn asked for speed. Winter asked for patience. To live here was to obey the weather, to bow before the sky. You wouldn't last a day, not because you are weak, but because your days are measured differently. Because your fingers have not hardened into tools. Because your hunger is emotional, not literal. Because you've never had to trade your sandals for a bowl of rice. But these people, the unseen, they walked barefoot on ice. They lit lanterns with hands too tired to tremble, and they taught their children to smile even when the cupboard was empty. Their joy was quiet, like a lullaby hummed while threshing wheat. Their sadness was shared in glances over boiling pots. They lived without fame, without comfort, without recognition, and yet they were the pillars, the breath of the country, the ones who kept the sky from falling. When history speaks, it often forgets them, but the wind remembers their voices. The earth remembers their steps. And tonight, you remember them too, in this stillness, in this story, in the weight of your own breath as it slows. You are listening, and that makes their lives heard once more. Sleep now, with them beside you, in silence that honors the work no one saw, but everyone needed. There were no grand ceremonies for the ordinary folk of feudal Japan, no dazzling rituals that echoed through palaces or temples. But in the stillness of their days, they wove rituals from the smallest acts, from habits so quiet the world barely noticed them. Before stepping outside, a woman would tap her fingers twice on the doorframe, whispering a wish for safety. A father would draw 3 circles in the dirt with the tip of his straw sandal, each one a silent prayer for the harvest, for health, for peace. Children learned to bow not only to elders but to trees that bore fruit, to streams that offered water, to stones that guarded the edges of rice paddies. They did not speak to the gods with voices, but with movement, with patience, with offerings folded from paper or gathered from fields. A single plum blossom placed beside a sick child, a splash of sake poured onto dry earth during drought, a candle left to burn through the night beside a bowl of salted rice. These gestures were soft, but they were the thread that kept their world from unraveling. They believed not in punishment, but in imbalance. If something went wrong, they asked not who to blame, but what had been forgotten. A broom left unblessed, a fox spirit disturbed, a grandmother's talisman misplaced, and so they honored everything, even the unseen. The air in the morning was not just air, it was breath passed down from ancestors. The path between fields was not just dirt, it was memory compressed by 1,000 barefoot walks. Even silence was not empty. It was filled with meaning, if one was quiet enough to listen. They marked seasons with offerings rather than calendars. In spring, they tied strips of cloth to plum branches. In summer, they lit small fires in iron bowls and waved smoke toward the eaves. In autumn, they placed dried fish at the edge of the forest for spirits who wandered. In winter, they rubbed ginger on their feet before sleep to keep dreams from freezing. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was meaningless. Even broken tools were wrapped in cloth before being discarded, thanked for their service. Even torn clothing was burned carefully, as if returning it to the thread spirits who once helped weave it. Life was too fragile to be careless with. They spoke softly to their crops. They apologized when stepping on insects. They hummed while mending, not out of joy, but because silence could attract sadness if left unchecked. When someone died, the village did not wail. Instead, they cooked the favorite meal of the departed and left it steaming beneath the open sky. They placed white stones in a circle and swept around them for days. They did not ask questions the dead could not answer. They waited. They bowed. They carried on. You would not last a day, not because you lack respect, but because your rituals are fast, digital, and distracted. Because you greet the day with noise, not reverence. Because you do not pause before entering a room or notice when the birds stop singing. They did. They noticed everything. The way shadows grew longer near the well. The way steam from soup curled in different directions depending on who stirred it. The way a forgotten shoe by the door might mean someone was never coming back. They saw the world in signs. A crack in a wall was a warning. A dog barking thrice was a signal. A dream of snow in summer meant someone far away was missing home. They didn't explain these things. They lived them. And in living them, they survived. They endured. You hear them now, don't you? In the gentle creak of the floor beneath your seat. In the hush that follows your own breath. Their rituals remain passed through silence, folded into time like paper cranes, still fluttering somewhere in the long corridor of memory. In the final light of feudal Japan, when the sun slipped behind the curved rooflines of silent villages, when the air turned silver and the insects quieted for a breath, the people did not speak of endings. They spoke of closing. A day was not over. It had folded. A life was not gone. It had turned inward, like a scroll returning to its case. They moved more slowly at dusk. Even footsteps softened. Lanterns were not lit to see, but to guide memory home. Inside each house, rituals continued slower now, quieter. A pot was washed not just clean, but with gratitude for its service. A door was closed not to keep the night out, but to invite dreams in. Children were not hushed to sleep. We were rewoven into it, with songs that did not need words. Their lullabies were gestures. A stroke of hair. The creak of an old stool, the sigh of warm rice cooling. Those who aged did not fear being forgotten. Their stories had already settled in corners, in grain sacks, in the handles of tools passed down. A woman's joke could remain in a wooden comb for generations. A man's silence could echo through the way his descendants stirred their miso. Memory did not need names. It needed rhythm. It needed repetition. The past did not ask to be remembered. It simply waited to be noticed. As winter crept in and nights thickened, more rituals emerged. Cedar leaves were burned not for warmth, but for clarity. Bathwater was stirred clockwise to align with the stars. Slippers were turned inward by the bed to remind the soul which way to return. Even illness had a rhythm. The sick were not avoided. They were honored, as bearers of imbalance needing restoration. A cup of warm barley, a folded towel on the brow, a prayer written in the air with smoke. Death was not a cliff, it was a shore. The old were not pushed from the world, but slowly absorbed by it. First their voices quieted, then their hands, then their names. And when they were gone, the space they left behind was not empty. It was full of patterns, repetitions, signs, a chopstick falling to the floor, a shadow in the rice steam, a door that would not close all the way. These were the ways they remained. Those still living did not cling. They bowed. They swept. They mended. They watched. The world did not comfort. It balanced. If a roof leaked, a bowl was placed beneath. If a crop failed, ashes were fed to the soil. If a heart broke, no one asked why. They placed warm stones on the chest and waited for breathing to find its way again. And always, always they listened. Not to answers, but to absence. To the wind passing between bamboo. To the space after a bell. To the final note of a song no longer sung. You would not last a day. Not because you are weak, but because you are loud. Because you expect noise to soothe and motion to matter. Because you have forgotten how to sit with silence and let it speak first. In feudal Japan, the end of a life was not marked by wailing or ceremony. It was marked by continuity, a son stirring the same pot, a daughter tracing the same path to the well, a neighbor lighting the same lantern, and so it went. So it still goes, in places the world no longer watches. And maybe, tonight, as you listen, as your own breath slows, as your body folds into stillness, you'll feel them, the quiet ones. They are not gone. They are simply listening back.